Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. Shout out to podmatch.com. Once again, they have taken the Move Swiftly podcast to another level. It was at a high level before Podmatch, but it's taken it to another level because they've taken the logistical work that I have to do when it comes to taking that logistical work out of finding guests and all that kind of stuff. So appreciate you very much, Podmatch. To my regular listeners, as promised, as the guarantee for this show, when you hit the play button, we get somebody again that has doing some incredible work, is here to serve you. These are the kind of people that I bring on this show, here simply to serve you, to get you a little bit better, just do something better every single day. Have the founder of East Coast Studios, Mr. Joe L. Oliver. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you making the time for me.
Yes, and like I was telling you before we started recording, I am incredibly pumped to get this master's class on how to turn your podcast into a business, to turn it into something that isn't just leisure, but it's actually something that's significant. And as you were talking a little bit about the stats, is so many podcast people, podcast hosts, whatever you want to call them at this point, so many of them fail after 3 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever it is. They have the website, they got the microphone, they got all the photo shoot, everything's looking good, and they've only made it to 10 or 15 episodes, if that. So, with that, why don't you, I think the best way to start off the conversation is to talk a little bit about your background, because it wasn't all peachy for you. There were situations that you lived through that I think you started off as an audio engineer, and then you had gone through some heart surgery and things like that. So it wasn't all a just smooth ride into building your business. So, dive a little bit into your background and we'll kind of go from there, man.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate and grateful for everything, but it certainly wasn't easy. I don't think anyone's journey is, especially for me. I don't really have a business background. So,
Yeah.
well, I got an education in audio engineering. I was doing some voiceover work as a freelancer, and I wanted to do more of that. I like that freedom of working for yourself, but I didn't really know where to go from there. And I just kind of noticed this is probably like 2015. Podcasting, I saw that this was a thing that was going on, and it seemed like there was a demand for services for editing podcasts. And I thought, well, hey, this is my background. Like, why don't I try doing that as a freelancer and see what happens? And that kind of took off, and I was able to transition into fully doing podcast editing for my work. I stopped doing the voiceover stuff,
Mhm.
and it was going pretty well. But like I mentioned, without any real business background, I didn't have this grand vision of a business or where I wanted to take it. It was more like, what do we do next? Or we have this challenge. How do we solve that? And now this has happened. What do we do with that?
Mhm.
So over the years, it just kind of evolved into what once was just me as a freelancer on my own into an actual company. And the heart surgery that was in 2018. So that was um, looking back, it was challenging at the time, but it's just like everyone has their struggles in life. It's just
Right.
something you go through and you make it through. So I don't really look on it as a big a big setback or anything, but it definitely gave me some insight at the time because
Right.
my brother works with me in the business full time, and if the worst happened, I didn't want him to lose that opportunity. Like we had set up this nice life, we were working together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So and that not just that, but I was going to be out of commission for like at least a few days.
Right.
Crazy enough, I was working like within a couple of days of having the surgery. But
That's a
all that
blessing.
said, I
Blessing.
wanted to have a resilient business that didn't revolve around me, and it did up until that point, and I had no idea really how to change that.
Right.
So it was been a learning process for sure over all these years, but it's kind of where we got to today. That was 5 years ago,
Mhm.
and we have a nice little company.
Yeah, and it's coincidental that it was 5 years ago, because 5 years ago, around 5 years ago, is when this specific podcast was started. And like I was mentioning to you before, I thought it was like something in which you had to pay a bunch of money and get set up, get a studio, pay a couple hundred. I think I actually spoke to someone where they were going to charge $100 an hour for renting a podcast room and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know people like you existed back then, that were gonna help me like when it comes to the voiceover. I used to like real talk, Joe, I used to record it with this phone, put it somewhere and just record it like some of my earlier episodes that were even that went for a fairly long time, but it was recorded right here on Anchor and stop record so many times I didn't like it. Okay, I'm gonna go back and record all that kind of stuff. So that leads me to wanting to know, how did you get yourself out there? Because again, people like me that were just jumping into the game really blindly. I was just practicing my public speaking ability. I didn't know how to maneuver. I chose the Anchor had the little clip arts that you can choose from. So I chose that. I didn't go up and find anybody to put my face in all that. How did you get yourself out there when you first started making that transition? And what kinds of things can you give any kind of examples of what kinds of things were you doing for people like me who are brand new in the space and just needed some direction and just go ahead. I'll let you kind of talk through that.
Sure. Yeah. So I, again, consider myself quite fortunate because I started my work on a website called Fiverr, which was like a freelance marketplace, kind of like an Amazon, but
right.
Yeah. So, but for services.
Mhm.
And that was, I originally got on there because a colleague of mine recommended it to me. And so
Mhm.
that was a game changer because they basically brought the people to you. Yeah, they take a
Right.
commission and everything, but you just set up a profile and learn how it works and go from there. So I felt like a lot of the business, I was just fortunate enough to have them to bring it to me. Now, the thing is, you had to do good work. If you're not good, you're not going to get business. Like, it's an algorithm involved. So I kind of cracked the code to that, was doing great stuff.
I just got to pause you there because I want to make sure that this point does not get brushed over for the listeners. There's a lot of platforms out there. There's a lot of apps. There's a lot of things you can do that are going to make your life easier. That's the beauty of living in 2024. But just like he said, your shit has to be good, right? You have to actually have good work, quality work. You got to go and perfect and develop your craft so these platforms can be beneficial to you. I had no idea that you were on Fiverr. It wasn't actually until I was in I think it was a Clubhouse. I remember when Clubhouse was a big thing, and I asked a
Mm.
question, and that's the person who told me about Fiverr. So it's great that I use it all the time now. So I didn't even know that that's where you started. So anyway, go ahead. I want to make sure I made that point for the listeners.
That's where I got my start. Yeah. And, back then, it was only, say, 2014. There was people that were on Fiverr years before that, and you will say the further you go back, the easier it was to get started because there were less people. I mean, the market is more and more challenging every day. So I'm kind of grateful that I have this many years in, and I don't have to start fresh.
Mhm.
But that's where I began, and so. To your question, there was a lot of learning on my part because, yeah, I had audio engineering training. I didn't really know about podcasting. It was still relatively new to me and a lot of people. And so, like, you were learning along the way and trying different things. People will come to me and say, "Hey, I need this done, but also, do you know how this works? Or can you help me set up my hosting? And what
Mhm.
is this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Let me figure it out." And then you
Right.
just amass all this knowledge over the years, and before you know it, you have that background where you can, I guess, consider yourself an expert,
Mhm.
and you can create a whole business around it. But that was one of the biggest ways that I got started, was just having that marketplace there, and a lot of buyers who I'm grateful to that they were patient. They were kind of learning as I was. And yeah, I don't know if that kind of answers what you're getting at there.
Yeah, well, it brings me to my next point because Fiverr is just a start. And actually, the person that does the thumbnails and a lot of the SEO stuff that I do on YouTube now, I found him on Fiverr as well. But then he messaged me and said, "Hey, do you need someone to do this full time? Because I see you put out a lot of content." So now I actually pay him every 2 weeks something to do all the thumbnails, to do all the optimization, the SEO stuff, and things like that. So when it comes to how you were able to expand beyond Fiverr, can you speak on that journey just a little bit and kind of get the listeners to understand, all right, that's a start. What kinds of questions and what kinds of relationships should they be building with their current customers to go from just a one-time payment to now this is reoccurring to now, okay, now I have a studio. Now I'm doing my own podcast where it's B2B and I'm telling people specifically how to use it to generate revenue and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Fiverr was a great start, but I don't think you want to rely on that forever. I don't want any single platform kind of dictating my entire income because you just never know. Like, they change your algorithm and then all of a sudden you're gone off the front page. And
Yep.
so there's tons of stories out there about that.
Very
So
true, right.
Yeah, it was definitely a priority to us to not have a business focused on there. But like I said, it was just I was grateful that it existed. It got me started. So we started a website, and we get some people in that way, just through blog content and that type of thing. But honestly, one of the best things that I've noticed over the year is just referrals. They've
Mm,
been fantastic in getting us new business, and as much as all of these other marketing methods can be useful as well, and they take effort, but I've been very grateful for any referrals that we get. They usually convert pretty well,
mhm,
but having a network, having connections is so important. And I think if I had to go back in time now, I would have focused on that more at that moment. So
mm,
we were lucky over the years to get referrals from people, but I wasn't really trying to do it. I was trying other things, but we've got a referral system now, so where we will give money to
mhm,
someone who gives us a proper referral. So
mhm,
if I could go back, that would be something that I would focus on more. And I think it's important more than ever now to have that kind of network, because like I said, the space is just so crowded. There's
mhm.
just so many people doing everything, vying for attention. Getting a referral from someone who says, "Hey, yeah, you need a podcast guy. Here's the guy." They trust that, there's a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a really better way than that to say, think about that when you are building your business, building your brand, even just making yourself appear trustworthy. Well, not just appearing trustworthy, but being trustworthy, but putting that out when you're making content online. Like, you want to seem that you are a trustworthy, reliable person to do business with.
Mhm.
And that's something I didn't think about until many years later.
Right.
But yeah.
So, given that's just so referral heavy, though, what are some of the things that the common mistakes that you normally see with a lot of podcasts? Also, people that say they want to start a podcast, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a lot of them out there, but not very few of them are active every single day. You're not listening. I mean, there's a lot of people that have podcasts, but very few of them are actually active. What are the mistakes that you're commonly seeing with people that say they want to start a podcast? And does that sort of waste your time? Like, does it make it so you have some parameters and some criteria before you actually decide you're going to work with a person? Because now that's your reputation on the line if they don't actually follow up and do and make the recordings and do the things that they said they were going to do.
That's a great question. I know you and I were talking about this before we started here, about how you're 800 episodes in. You've been doing it for a long time, which is very
Right.
commendable, because if you look at the stats, many will launch and they'll give up after 3 episodes. And then, like, the next bunch are gone after 20 episodes. They just don't stick with it, which makes me question why even start in the first place. And that's basically the main question I'll ask anyone that has ever come to me.
Hmm.
Should I do a podcast, or what should I be doing? Like anything, it takes time to build this up. You can't start a business and in 3 days be where you want to be
Mhm.
success wise. So if you're not going to at least commit to a podcast for a year or more, there's literally zero reason to begin, because you're just not going to get the results from it. So that's a huge thing that I talk about with people. And funny enough, what you mentioned there about criteria in who we work with. For
Mhm.
many years, I did a lot of podcast launches. It was a big part of the business, because starting out, of course, I was just happy to do anything for money, and I had that knowledge, and that was
Right.
cool. But
Right.
as we evolved, I started to see, these situations where I'm doing these launches, I'm investing a lot of time, charging an okay rate, but really what I was banking on was this person doing a podcast for a year or two and working with us on it.
Mhm.
That's where I would really get a return for, on my time and for the business. But a lot of people, man, they just could not stick with it. And perhaps this is an observation I had over the years too. Like, maybe as a business, we should be looking at ways to help people make the process easier so they can continue. But at the end of the day, I can't force you to do it. Like, you've got to want to do it.
Mhm.
And so we would have a lot of these situations where we would launch and people would just give up. They just couldn't keep it going. And I realized, this is not really worth my time. And
Mhm.
so, criteria wise, these days, sometimes I'll do them, but typically we like to see people who are already established, because I just need to see that commitment from someone that, hey, I'm going to be doing this for the long haul. If you're
Mhm.
just going to, give up, which there's various reasons why people might give up. I don't fully understand all of them. Like, I don't understand starting if you can't make it past 3 episodes.
Right. Some of the reasons I can sort of see, because if you're not, let's say, Andy Frisella or Joe Rogan and people that are doing this full time, there's only 24 hours in the day. All right. And if you're going off vanity metrics that they go on social media, if you're going off likes and subscribers and listens and things like that, you probably won't see the point of actually continuing with it because you're associating these vanity metrics with actual profits. But you have a podcast in which it's called Profits Through Podcasting, correct? I want to make sure I get it right.
That's correct.
Right.
Yep.
So you've been able to sort of teach this element, and I agree with it because I actually just did a video. I want to say it was 2 weeks ago now when JJ Redick got hired by the Lakers. I did a video talking about how podcasting is now the new way to do job interviews. Podcasting is now the new way to do business to business and do your referrals and maybe make your calls and do your outreach. You can do that all in one swoop, which is, again, another reason why this podcast has stayed so consistent as it is. Can you speak a little bit to how you were able to develop a framework around that? Because that, I think, leads to more people realizing, hey, I might not get a bunch of listens. It may not be one of those things where I'm Joe Rogan. Nobody's Joe Rogan or John Lee Dumas and, some of these that are doing like a million listens a day, which is totally fine. You don't have to be that famous. You could just have a voice. You could have a specific target audience. Go after your target, serve your audience every single day, and just focus on that. So I'll give you the platform to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, understanding what your goal is huge when it comes to podcasting, because to go back to what we were saying, like that motivation or why you would quit versus keep going, you need to have a clear picture of why you're in it in the first place. There's various reasons. Some people just like to do it as a hobby and they didn't really want to get anything out of it. Others may be primarily motivated by money, which I don't think is a great space to be in either. But sorry. So there are a variety of ways that you can make those into, like, make a podcast into something that provides for you whatever it is. Like, for some people, it could be strictly networking, as you're talking about there. Like, you're meeting people, so you might not have a piece of paper or a spreadsheet where you see, hey, I'm making profits from this, and it's often difficult to make that connection. Like, how do I know that I made any money from this podcast? But there are a bunch of ways to do it and a bunch of other benefits that could come from it. So, like I mentioned, networking, connections, there's huge value in growing your network. You never know who's out there that you're going to meet and what you might be able to do with each other business-wise in the future. They could lead to referrals. It could generate revenue for your business directly if you have a business. There could be sponsorships where companies just pay you because you have an audience. You mentioned, you're involved with Toastmasters, so learning to speak, getting confident in front of a camera and a mic. There are just so many benefits here. Long-term sustainability, we do want to see something coming back to you there. And for most people, that's going to be money in some way, because you kind of need that to make it sustainable. It could be a labor of love, but a lot of people that we're working with, they want some kind of return and to grow it into something bigger. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'd answer that question.
Right. And I actually I'm a member of a group coaching program. Shout out to Dre Baldwin. Dre was on this show actually when it first started back in 2021. 2020. He was actually the one that told me about Fiverr and all that. He said he has episodes that's close to 2,000 at this point. Work on your game. He does it every single day. But he was telling me a lot of the same things you were telling me in terms of, it's practice. It is actual practice. And it's one of those things where if you focus on the famous people, and a lot of these famous people, they do it as a hobby. They do it very leisurely. It's not something that they do to generate leads. It's just something that they're just kicking it, having fun. And there really isn't no return. But if you're just kind of the everyday person and you want to develop your skills, your public speaking skills, your networking skills, your ability to build these relationships, and these recordings, once it's out there forever. As long as the internet's existed, which is the internet's not going anywhere. Put yourself out there, listen to your previous episodes, go out, see how you improve. All that stuff is stuff that's in your control. Your fame and all that, that's not in your control. But what is in your control is how much better you can get, how much you're able to progress from the first day you started to the next episode, and you get to hear it over and over and over and over again. And what I've learned too is sometimes it's not for family members. I mean, I can't tell you any family members that really listen to my show at this point because it's so many, and that may be discouraging initially, but when you start seeing you're getting listens and your family members aren't listening, now it's okay, now I have something here. Now there's something that is of actual substance, and it creates the confidence in you. So I want to give you the platform or the opportunity a little bit to talk about it's East Coast Studios and everything it entails, what you offer, who you work with, and just kind of give us the whole rundown here.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I would like to follow up with one further
Yeah,
point
please,
there on what you just said, though. Yeah, consistency and a desire to grow and improve for sure is what's going to take you places over time, right? That's huge. Because remember you said that you started out recording on your smartphone.
my
Now,
phone,
people
man.
would come to me,
Right.
yeah, people used to come to me and they'd say, "Well, how can I use this?" And I'd say, "Well, you can. It's not really the greatest. If it's a company or someone that's really trying to look professional, I would say, listen, at least let's invest a little in a mic here. But yeah, you could technically use it. So the
And
thing
just,
is, when you're getting,
fun fact, I literally got this mic maybe about 3 weeks ago.
well, there you go,
It was
and
actually
you've come all
great. I
this
told
way.
because I was recording my books on Audible, and I went back to my old ways, started using my phone. I'm wondering why it's not going on. He's like, yeah, you're gonna need to get a mic, man. You got to finally just make the investment and get a mic, man. Come on.
Right. So you can start, and you don't need to worry too much about these little details, depending on what your starting point is. If you have nothing out there, you don't even know what you're doing, you just want to start podcasting,
Right.
well, just start recording because there's going to be so many other things you need to improve upon along the way. Like you're probably not going to speak very well. You won't be able to get anyone to come on your show, those kinds of things.
Right.
So it's fine to just do something. But we want to be on the track to know that, hey, I can't do this forever. Like if I'm still doing this in 2 months, I'll try to invest in a mic and I'm going to improve this and listen back, like you said, to my episodes and improve my speaking, those types of things. So don't get too hung up on that, but you do want a minimum level of quality, specifically if you're, say, in business right now and trying to put out a good impression. But just getting started is a huge, a huge thing. There's lots to perfect along the way. And this is something I've had to impress upon clients as well when they come to work with me and they're like, I just can't get a decision out of them for these tiny little things that don't matter. Like they can't even record an episode once a week, which is like the biggest thing that you should do. It's just be consistent. And they don't do that, but they come back and ask, hey, what about this? What about this? Oh, my mic doesn't sound, there's a bit of an echo. Like you're not even doing the biggest thing that you need to do here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my rant on to conclude that section.
It is fun because I've heard that a lot myself. There's been people that have come to me and asked me, all right, how do you start a podcast? And I tell them, make sure before you even pay for anything, you have 10 episodes that you like recorded. Like, don't even pay for nothing. Make sure there's 10 episodes that you like recorded. I'm giving you that number 10. And then once it's recorded in the can, then you could start to maybe put out one here, see how some feelers go. But all the marketing, the photo shoots, and all the stuff that you guys pay for, telling you, it's like taking your money and flushing it down the toilet. I'm just telling you straight up.
That is a great piece of advice. I wish I thought of that because, as I mentioned, I had struggled with this launch issue over the years with people just not committing. So that would have been a great way to tell them, hey, we need 10 of these first before we do anything else.
Yes, sir.
And, I encountered a lot of people as well who they think that paying someone is going to be the solution. Like once I pay you, Joel, to do this launch, now I'm going to be committed. And that's not the case whatsoever. And you'd be shocked at how many people pay to start the launch and they don't follow through. They don't even get it started.
And I'll let you get to your company in a second, but I want to make sure I make this point too for the listeners this is why there needs to be a focus on high ticket, high level clients and serious people. All right. Whatever the business you're in, I'm not sure what you're selling out there, but whatever it is you're selling, if you were to focus on you serving your premium people, these problems go away really, really quick because you have the mindset of I'm serving a certain type of psychographics. Again, I know you can help a lot of people, but in your head, you need to, this is why I tell people all the time, I serve business owners that have 20 or more employees specifically because I have keynotes, I have workshops in which I want to serve their employees. So I don't run into the folks that, again, I'm not necessarily gonna not do business with someone that doesn't have 20 employees, but their business is not the priority. Focus on your priority and let everything else have that trickle down effect. So I'm sure that's kind of the place you were when you started your business, and it's with your brother, right?
Yeah, he's my business partner. So very grateful
That's
for
awesome.
that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. To be in business with your bro.
Yeah, some people will tell you not to do business with your family, but he's one of the most trustworthy people in the world to me, so I'm good with that.
Right. Well, I'm sure there's, a little fight, but that's probably just all, friendly, brotherly love. It's great to work with your family. That is, I will tell you that it's great to work with your family.
Yeah, and the fact that we've both been able to create this life for ourselves, which is, nothing extravagant, but even just the ability to work for yourself is a
Mhm.
huge thing to me. So the fact that both of us have been able to do that, and it's fun. So yeah, I'm grateful. Um, and you were asking me about the company. You mentioned high ticket offers. So
No,
you
go
could.
ahead. I'm listening. There's an event going on around me, but go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned high ticket offers. So that's a huge thing. That's one of the things that we teach in our webinar, Profits Through Podcasting. So you're talking about what kind of people we like to work with. And typically it is entrepreneur types who have a podcast
Mhm.
and they want the results. They want to be consistent. They want to do an episode a week, but they have better things to do. So they want to record the podcast and hand everything else off to us, which is really what someone in that situation should do. So we'll
Mhm.
do the editing, write the notes, do clips for social media, upload it. They can be very hands off after they record it. And so, since they're looking through that lens of how do I generate leads and revenue for my business through a podcast, that's one of the things that we teach is how to actually optimize for that. And the high ticket offer you mentioned is a big part of it because if your offer isn't big enough, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you need a high ticket offer, but if it's not big enough, you don't have the margins there to support a podcast production and you're just spinning your wheels trying to get these like tiny clients that aren't paying you enough.
Right.
So that is actually one of the key things that we teach in that is the
Mhm.
importance of having a big offer there. So you're able to um, work with fewer clients but higher quality clients.
Right.
That's a big one of my favorites. Yeah, so
So
that
when it
just
comes to
ties in.
the high ticket offer that now you're teaching how to create a high ticket offer to the podcasters, or are you talking about the high ticket offer that you offer podcasters?
So I don't get into necessarily teaching it too in depth,
Mhm.
but one of the things, since we had so many clients who were trying to figure out how do I get leads and revenue for my business from podcasting, we designed this webinar to teach them like, here's why you might be struggling with it right now, or here's the 5 shifts that you need to make to
Mhm.
actually get on track to generate these leads and revenue for the business. So
Okay.
one of those steps is the high ticket offer. So
Mhm.
I always tell them, if you want help with that, find like a business consultant or someone that can help with that actual
Okay.
process because it took
All right.
us months to do.
Right.
But that's a key step in if you're looking at how do I make money for my business through podcasting, well, you've got to have an offer where the margins make sense.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
All right. And so you don't get into the what the offer is and when they should be saying it on their podcast and who they should be bringing in and all that kind of stuff in your webinar. Is that just further down the line when they start working with you?
It's further down the line. It's something they need to be aware of.
Mhm.
And if they're wondering why isn't this working or how can I actually make it work, that's a key point. But
Mhm.
I don't claim to be a business consultant, so I don't really get into that deep with them. But I know, say like, here's what we can do to help you. Here's these 5 shifts that you need to be aware of to
Mhm.
get yourself on the right track, and that's definitely one of them. But I wouldn't be the one advising them on what offer to
Telling you,
make
God forbid,
necessarily.
the man has ethics. All right, ethics. Doesn't just tell him he could tell them he could do something when he can't. So that is commendable. So kudos to you when it comes to that as well. So what's
Thanks.
the best way? Well, first, before you put your information out there, what do you see as like the next phase in your overall like arching goal for your business and East Coast Studios and how you see it growing?
hmm Well, we've been working on branding is a big one. We've just started working with the company actually for that because the next thing I want to do is continue that shift to higher quality clients,
Mhm.
allowing us to spend more time with them and be more invested in their results. Like
Right.
the more another great reason for high ticket offers, the more that they're paying you, the more time you can spend with your clients, you can help them get results as opposed to working with a bunch of low paying clients where you're just busy
Yeah.
just serving them and not really able to do much. So
Got
our shift is towards that. We're working on our brand more so we can actually stand out in the marketplace. That's the big aspiration of mine.
Okay.
So that's what I would say is the next thing on
Now,
our
would
to-do
it be
list here.
you guys getting into like a radio or your own studio and stuff like that? Or is it just probably going to be whatever is needed to get your brand out there at the time, because you don't know nowadays, because you didn't even know podcasting was a thing. So, what would
Hmm.
I guess it would sort of be whatever's going to get your name out there to get more people into your world, huh?
Yeah, so we only recently started this podcast, our podcast. We only started recently really putting a push on Instagram and social media because I wasn't really comfortable with that, but I knew I had to just come out of my box and put myself out there.
Yeah.
So that's a new thing for us. And yeah, not only just that, not only just putting ourselves out there, but having a brand that resonates with the target person that we want to work with. Because, you can end up looking really generic, especially in an industry like this. It's almost a commodity in a way. So you want to stand out and show your ideal client that, hey, this is the guy or this is the company that I want to work with. And that's a big focus right now.
Great. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, reach out if they want to support? I'm sure especially the listeners on this show would definitely be interested in hearing more about what you're all about.
Sure, yeah. EastCoastStudio.com is the website. All the social media is on there. Also, the link to the webinar, if that's interesting to a business owner with a podcast, that would be a great place to start.
All right. So that'll also be included in the show notes as well. So, Joel, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. I believe you said it was 2014-ish time. You had just started on Fiverr. You're the young Joel. Pretend that young person has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Yeah, I guess I would say don't hesitate to put yourself out there because I waited way too long on that. That's like one of those big life lessons that I look back on and wish, why didn't I just do that sooner? Like, for example, I mentioned the podcast we only started 6 months ago. I've been helping people with podcasts for ages and getting them results, but I was kind of just didn't really want to put myself out there. And, if I had done it 3 years ago, I'd be way further ahead now. So getting advice and certainty around what you should be doing. And in that case, I'm giving the advice here is putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid to be yourself. I wish I just started doing that a lot sooner.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And for the reason I do that for you listeners, again, if this is your first time listening, is if you're in that situation, I want you guys to understand that is for you to understand. We're trying to give you the steps, give you the gems, give you the little things in which are going to prolong or make your rise to the top a little quicker than ours. And that's what the show is all about. It's why it's called the Move Swiftly podcast. All right. So everyone out there, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.